The heart monitor flatlined. Warren Trump froze. Charlotte. No breath. No movement. Her doll hit the floor with a soft thud. Ashley, he roared, fumbling for his phone, hands trembling so violently it slipped from his grip. Get in here. Cold air gusted through the balcony door. The red gown on Charlotte's tiny body fluttered like it weighed nothing. From the other bed, Victoria stirred. Daddy, what's wrong with her? Ashley, the home nurse, burst in. What happened? She just stopped. Warren choked out. She smiled 10 minutes ago. God, not today, please, not today. Ashley checked vitals. Low heart rate. Still there. We need oxygen. Warren backed into the wall, dizzy. He didn't hear the soft footsteps until Angela appeared in the doorway. I heard shouting, she said, calm but alert. Do something. Warren snapped. She's dying. Angela didn't flinch. She knelt beside the bed, checked Charlotte's forehead, then turned to Ashley. Get warm towels. Humidifier. Now. She's hypothermic. Ashley blinked. How do you? I was a pediatric hospice nurse, Angela said quietly. Warren's jaw clenched. He hadn't known, hadn't cared to ask. Angela leaned close to Charlotte, whispering something only the child could hear. A faint breath escaped Charlotte's lips. Warren dropped to his knees again, this time in disbelief. You need to stop planning a funeral, Angela said, locking eyes with him, and start fighting for their lives. I already made the arrangements, Warren whispered. There's no hope. They were wrong. From behind, a quiet sob. Daddy? Victoria's voice trembled. Is Charlotte going to heaven now? Warren couldn't speak. Angela placed a firm hand on his shoulder. There's something you need to know. His heart pounded. What? But even as he asked it, the questions he feared most screamed louder. But how did things get this bad? What was the maid hiding? And why was the child crying for help? Before we continue, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's dive back into the story. The mansion had grown quiet long before Charlotte stopped breathing. After Warren's wife died, silence had settled over the house like fog over a graveyard. Her absence wasn't just felt, it echoed in every corner. No more laughter in the kitchen, no humming from upstairs, just machines, beeping, timers, pills, and pain. Warren stood by the window, unmoving, watching the frost bloom across the glass like ivy. He had built empires, conquered boardrooms, and outsmarted men twice his age. But he couldn't stop cancer from eating away at both of his daughters. He hadn't been there when they first got sick. Quarterly meetings in Tokyo, conferences in Berlin. By the time he understood what was happening, Charlotte and Victoria had already been reduced to pale skin, thinning hair, and whispered dreams of playgrounds they'd never run through again. Daddy, Charlotte had once asked from her hospital bed, why do my bones feel like they're crying? He hadn't answered. Couldn't. Instead, he wrote checks, brought in specialists, built a wing onto the house just for round-the-clock care. But the more money he threw at the problem, the sicker the girls seemed to become. Warren lived in the guest suite now, across the hall from his daughters. Their room was too painful to sleep in. The girls still asked for bedtime stories, but his voice always broke on the first page. He stopped reading. Fear had swallowed him. So had guilt. And worst of all, the pity in Katie's eyes, his own mother. She tried to help, read to the girls, prayed over them. But her gentle reminders, they still need their father, Warren, only made the ache sharper. Then there was Ashley. The nurse had once been gentle. Now her tone had hardened. The more Charlotte cried from stomach cramps, the more Ashley snapped. You have to stay still. If you won't eat, you'll only get worse. There was no cruelty in her hands, but it lived in her indifference. She saw numbers, charts, decline, not two little girls desperate for warmth. One evening, Warren found Victoria curled up in a corner, her red gown bunched around her knees. "Are you cold?" he asked. She nodded. "Why didn't you say something?" She didn't look up. "Ashley says I complain too much." He tucked a blanket around her shaking shoulders, heart cracking in pieces. "You can always tell me." But she didn't believe that. Not anymore. Grief sat on Warren's chest like a heavy night, suffocating and still. He had no strength left to fight. The hospice counselor had told him to prepare. So he did. He picked a cemetery plot, ordered the white caskets, even chose the music, his wife's favorite hymn. All that was left was to wait until the day a stranger walked into their lives. Angela moved slowly through the doorway, her steps soundless on the polished hardwood floor. Her apron still bore traces of flour from the breakfast she'd made that morning, and her hands, though work-worn, carried the grace of someone who had held sorrow without letting it break her. She didn't rush. She never did. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet and low, almost like a lullaby wrapped in breath. "Good morning, baby," she whispered as she knelt beside Charlotte's bed. Charlotte's eyes fluttered open. She hadn't spoken much in days. But now, with Angela close, she tried. Her dry lips parted. "Angie," she murmured, barely a sound. Angela smiled softly, brushing a damp curl off Charlotte's forehead. "Shush, sweet girl. I'm right here." The child's tiny fingers reached weakly toward Angela's hand. When their skin touched, something shifted. A calm settled over Charlotte's small body. Her shoulders, once tense with pain, relaxed ever so slightly. Her breath deepened. She didn't speak again, but she didn't need to. From the other bed, Victoria peeked from beneath her blanket, then slowly slid off the edge. She padded across the room and wordlessly leaned into Angela's side. Not a single word passed between them. Just trust. Angela wrapped one arm around Victoria, resting her chin on the girl's head. She began to hum, low and steady. A hymn, soft, familiar. Something Warren's wife used to sing at bedtime. Warren stood in the hallway watching. Something about the scene made his chest tighten. His girls, who had retreated from everyone, even him, were now wrapped around the maid like she was home. He stepped inside, arms crossed. "How did you know that song?" Angela didn't flinch. "Lisa, my daughter, loved it." He blinked. "I didn't know you had a daughter." "I did." Her voice was steady. "She passed 3 years ago. Cancer." Silence settled between them. Angela turned back to the twins. Victoria clung to her, Charlotte already drifting back to sleep. Both girls looked more peaceful than they had in weeks. Warren frowned. "They barely react to me." "They don't need strength right now," Angela said gently. "They need softness." It stung more than he wanted to admit. He nodded toward the humidifier. "What you did earlier. How did you know she needed that?" Angela didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed a kiss on Charlotte's temple and slowly rose to her feet. "I've walked this road before. I know what pain sounds like." Her words held weight, but not pride. Just experience. Just love. Warren studied her. There was something unsettling about how quickly the girls trusted her. How deeply. He couldn't shake it. And yet something in him, something buried beneath grief and fear, wanted to believe her presence meant something more. Angela stepped toward the door, but paused, whispering something under her breath. Warren leaned in, just enough to catch it. "Lord, if you've brought me here, help me do more than clean." The girls were asleep now, peacefully, impossibly still. Angela turned, and in the dim hallway light, her face looked older, wiser, marked by something not even time could name. But no one knew the power she carried inside her. The morning air was thick with the scent of disinfectant and orange blossom from the diffuser. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder. The ticking clock, the faint rattle in Charlotte's breathing, the clink of metal trays down the hall. Angela stepped into the room without gloves. Ashley raised an eyebrow from across the hall. "You're not wearing protective gear." Angela didn't look back. "I'm not here to treat symptoms. I'm here to reach her." She knelt slowly beside Charlotte's bed, letting her knees meet the floor like she was entering sacred ground. Her fingers lightly touched the child's forehead, warm but not burning. The girl didn't stir, but her lips twitched. "Sweet girl," Angela whispered in a sing-song rhythm, brushing Charlotte's hair from her face. "Did I tell you what my Lisa used to draw when she felt scared?" No response. Angela pulled a crayon from her apron. Just one, a dull red. She drew a tree. "Big one," said the branches were arms that held her at night. She placed the crayon gently in Charlotte's palm, then began to hum. Low, steady, an old African lullaby, one her grandmother used to sing when the sky was heavy and the land was dry. Warren watched from behind the door. He hadn't meant to listen. He had come to remind Angela not to overstep. Ashley had complained about her again, but now, frozen in place, he couldn't look away. Angela leaned closer, her voice soft. "If you feel strong enough, draw one branch. Just one. That's all you need to do today." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Charlotte's fingers curled slowly around the crayon. Warren's breath caught. A movement. It wasn't big, but it was real. She hadn't responded to music, light, or medicine for days. And now, a single red crayon gripped by a trembling hand. Angela didn't cheer. She didn't startle the moment. She just smiled and whispered, "Good girl." Warren turned away quickly before she saw him. His hands were already shaking. It should have filled him with relief. But instead, it terrified him. What if it was false hope? What if believing again only broke him harder? He gripped the hallway railing, staring down at the marble floor. He had already planned their burial, chosen their last clothes, written a eulogy he hadn't shown anyone. And now, one crayon changed everything. He returned to his office, closed the door, sat in the leather chair that still smelled like his wife's perfume. He wanted to believe, but he didn't know how anymore. Back in the bedroom, Victoria sat up slowly, watching Angela with wide eyes. The maid turned and offered her the other half of the blanket. "You're safe, sweetheart. You don't have to be brave here." Victoria crawled closer, resting her head on Angela's lap. Angela looked up toward the ceiling for a brief second and whispered, "Thank you." Everything felt different. And then something happened that forced him to question everything. Warren stood at the edge of the nursery, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His jaw clenched as he watched Angela place a soft blanket around Victoria's shoulders and kneel beside Charlotte again. He had seen the way the girls clung to her, as if she were more than a maid, more than comfort, as if she were their mother, and that terrified him. "You're overstepping," he said, voice cold and sharp. Angela didn't flinch. They needed warmth. They needed touch. They have a medical team for that. Angela stood slowly, keeping her tone steady. "No, they have a medical team for charts and reports. What they need is someone who sees them, someone who listens when they cry, even when no one else can hear it." Warren took a step forward. "Don't lecture me about my daughters." "I'm not," she said gently. "I'm reminding you they're still alive." The tension snapped like a rubber band pulled too far. Behind them, the door creaked. Ashley entered with a clipboard, eyes darting between them. "I thought we agreed to limit non-medical interference," Ashley said curtly, not hiding her disdain. Angela didn't look at her. "What you call interference, they call healing. Ashley's eyes narrowed. You're not a doctor. You're the maid. Angela turned, her voice soft but edged in iron. I was a pediatric hospice nurse for 9 years, and I've walked with a child through death. So unless you're prepared to do more than skin vitals, I suggest you stop getting in the way. Ashley's lips curled. We'll see how long you last. As she turned to leave, her elbow caught a small toy giraffe on the dresser. It toppled to the floor and snapped, the leg broken clean off. Victoria's eyes went wide. The giraffe had belonged to her mother. Silence fell, a thick, uncomfortable silence that pressed against the walls. Ashley didn't apologize. She just walked out and slammed the door. The sudden noise startled Charlotte, who let out a soft, panicked whimper. Angela rushed to her side and wrapped her arms gently around the girl's shoulders. Warren didn't move. This was unraveling. And just when things couldn't feel more fragile, the oxygen monitor on Charlotte's bedside table began to beep. Fast, then faster. Angela's head shot up. She's panicking. Her lungs. Warren moved closer. Is a seizure? No, Angela said quickly. It's fear. She can't breathe because she's afraid. Ashley returned with ice in her voice. Step back. Let us handle this. She doesn't need protocol. Angela snapped. She needs calm, touch, familiarity. But Ashley was already adjusting equipment, ignoring Angela completely. Charlotte's breath hitched. Her lips turned slightly blue. Victoria began crying silently in the corner. Warren stood frozen, helpless. Every instinct told him to trust the machines. But his heart whispered something else. Angela was on her knees again, whispering, You're safe. Just like before. Breathe with me, baby. Charlotte's chest rose once, barely. Then again. Angela held her breath, praying it would be enough. The beeping slowed. But no one spoke. The hope they'd held on to cracked in the middle. But the real fight had only just begun. The pediatric specialist stood at the foot of the bed, flipping through Charlotte's latest chart. His brow furrowed in concentration, then slowly lifted in quiet disbelief. Well, he murmured, looking up at Ashley, then Warren. This is unexpected. Warren's pulse quickened. What do you mean? Her lung function has stabilized. Not dramatically, but enough to say we're seeing the beginning of a response. Emotionally and physically. There's reduced inflammation, lower fever spikes, stronger breathing patterns. Someone's doing something right. Ashley shifted uncomfortably. We haven't changed your medication. No, the doctor said, glancing toward Angela, who stood quietly by the wall. But something has changed. He turned back to Warren. Keep whatever's working. Keep it close. The moment hung in the air like morning fog. Later that night, long after the doctor had gone, Warren sat alone in his office, the glow of the laptop screen casting shadows on his face. He hadn't meant to pry, but something in Angela's voice had haunted him. He typed, Angela West, pediatric hospice nurse. Angela West, daughter past cancer. Angela West, volunteer healing programs. Her name came up in articles, quiet ones, local features, photos of her holding frail children, testimonials from families. She didn't just care for our son. She carried us all through his last breath. Warren leaned back in his chair. His throat burned, and for the first time in months, he wept. His hand went to his face, trying to stop the tears, but they came anyway, hot, quiet, full of guilt and awe. Maybe God had not forgotten his house after all. Upstairs, Charlotte stirred from her light sleep, eyes scanning the dark room. She didn't call for her father. She called softly. Angie. Angela came immediately, kneeling beside the bed with that same patient stillness. Charlotte didn't speak. She simply curled her fingers around Angela's wrist and pulled her hand toward her cheek. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," Angela said, brushing her thumb gently across Charlotte's skin. "I've been there. I don't want to go to heaven yet." Angela's voice didn't break. "Then we'll stay here, one day at a time." Charlotte clung to her like a lifeline, refusing to let go, even as she drifted back to sleep. From the hallway, Warren watched. He didn't speak. Couldn't. His knees nearly gave out under the weight of it all. The truth, the grief, the fragile thread of hope that had returned to his home in the form of a dark-skinned maid with lavender hands and lullabies in her throat. The man who had prepared for death now feared he might get his daughters back, and that maybe, just maybe, he didn't deserve them. He looked up toward the ceiling, his voice cracking. "God, what are you doing?" No answer came, only silence, until the day everything changed forever. The morning sun spilled into the girl's bedroom, golden and soft, touching everything like a gentle promise. The air was still, but not heavy. Quiet, but not hopeless. Angela sat cross-legged on the floor between the two beds, her hands open, waiting. Charlotte's frail legs dangled off the side of the mattress. For weeks, she hadn't moved more than a few inches. Her bones had grown too thin. Her muscles had weakened. But this morning, when Angela whispered gently, "Would you like to try?" The child had nodded. "Only if you help me," Charlotte had said, her voice barely a breath. "I won't let go," Angela replied. She positioned herself beside the bed, her arms ready to catch. "Just your foot," she whispered. "Just touch the floor. That's enough for today." Victoria held her breath, clutching the stuffed giraffe with its broken leg. Warren stood quietly in the doorway, unable to speak. Charlotte's lips trembled. Her cheeks were pale, but her fingers clung to Angela's shoulder with quiet desperation. Angela nodded. "You're stronger than yesterday. That's what matters." The child inhaled slowly. Then she moved. Her right foot slid downward. It hovered, then touched the cold floor. Her toes curled instinctively at the chill. Angela smiled, but didn't cheer. "Good. Breathe. Don't rush." Charlotte blinked back tears. "It hurts." "I know," Angela said softly, "but it's real. It means you're still here." She guided Charlotte's other foot down, both now barely brushing the floor. The child was standing, supported, shaking, terrified, but standing. In the hall, Warren's heart thundered in his chest. He hadn't dared dream of this. He hadn't even asked God for it. And yet it was happening. Behind him, Ashley watched and frowned. Her eyes darted to the medication log clipped to her tablet. Quietly, she walked away. Minutes later, the machine monitoring Charlotte's oxygen levels began to beep erratically. Angela turned instantly. Charlotte's breathing was fine, calm, steady. Something was wrong. Angela checked the device. The oxygen feed had been redirected. Not unplugged, just slowed. Warren saw it too. His eyes snapped to the hallway, where Ashley had just vanished. Angela didn't speak. She fixed the setting quickly, then held Charlotte close. "You're safe, just like before." Victoria, eyes wide, whispered, "Did she do that on purpose?" Angela didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Warren stepped into the room fully now. His voice was low. "You stay with them. I'll handle the rest." Angela nodded, placing a kiss on Charlotte's forehead. "We're okay." Outside, the wind picked up. Light filtered through the window in thick gold lines, painting the girls' red gowns in warmth. Charlotte closed her eyes, her lips still trembling. Angela hummed. Victoria laid her head on Angela's arm, and Warren, for the first time, stepped close enough to feel the warmth of their breath and hope. His eyes filled again, And then came the moment no one expected. It began with a whisper. Angela had just finished tucking a quilt around Charlotte's legs when the child looked up at her and said, voice raspy but clear, "Can I try today?" Angela blinked. "Try what, sweetheart?" Charlotte glanced down at her feet. To walk. Just a little. Angela's breath caught. Across the room, Victoria sat up, eyes wide. "You can't," she whispered. "It still hurts." Charlotte didn't respond right away. She looked over to where her father stood, silent near the doorway, watching. "But I want to try." Angela knelt before her, tears already welling. "Then I'm right here, baby. One step at a time." She offered her hands. Charlotte gripped them. Her hands were still small, still thin, but not as weak as before. And then, slowly, trembling, Charlotte stood. The beeping machines didn't scream. Her breathing held steady. Her knees wobbled, but her resolve did not. Angela backed up one tiny step. "Just here." Charlotte lifted her right foot and stepped. Then another. By the third step, Warren had dropped everything in his hands. By the fourth, he was on his knees. She walked. Not far, not fast, but on her own, holding Angela's hands, sobbing softly but not stopping. Angela was crying now too. "That's it, baby girl. That's it." Victoria covered her mouth, as if afraid the moment might break if she breathed too loud. Warren didn't care that his suit was wrinkled or that his knees hit the hardwood with a thud. He reached out, pulled Charlotte into his arms, and wept, loudly, openly, without shame. She clung to him, her tiny arms wrapping around his neck. "Daddy, I missed you." He shook. "I'm here. I'm so sorry. I should have fought harder, I should have." But the words fell apart in his mouth, drowned in tears. Angela stood back, wiping her cheeks, overwhelmed. Her lips moved in silent prayer as she looked toward the window, where the sun now poured in like liquid gold. The room was quiet, no machines, no voices, just peace. Even Ashley, who had stood frozen outside the door, could not step inside. It was as if an invisible presence filled the room. Something ancient, something holy. Angela dropped to her knees, her head bowed. "Thank you, Lord." Warren looked around the room through blurry eyes. This was not a miracle of science. No pill had caused this. No treatment. This was not science. This was grace. He kissed Charlotte's forehead. She smiled through her tears. Victoria ran over and joined the embrace, burying her face between them. Angela watched the three of them, the broken family pieced back together by something no chart could measure, and for the first time since Lisa's death, she felt whole again. They stayed that way, together, weeping, breathing, holding one another, as the sun drenched the room in glory. Ashley never returned to the nursery. After that morning, after the miracle, her silence became its own confession. Warren confronted her privately. No one raised voices. He didn't need to. She had tampered with the oxygen. She had called Angela just a maid. But most of all, she had stopped seeing the girls as children, and now she was gone. Peace crept into the mansion slowly, like the morning sun through half-open curtains. Not loud, not triumphant, just quiet peace. Charlotte now walked from room to room, holding her sister's hand, as if trying to reclaim every corner of the house she once feared she'd never see again. Her cheeks were fuller. Her laughter had returned. She painted again, branches, trees, arms reaching upward toward a sky she wasn't afraid of anymore. Victoria slept through the night without fever dreams. She sang softly now when she played, and sometimes, when Angela passed by, she'd wrap her arms around her legs and whisper, "I love you." Angela remained humble. She still wiped counters, folded sheets, and stirred soup. But something had shifted. Everyone felt it. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was family. Warren stood beside her in the hallway one evening, watching the girls play with puzzles on the rug. "I never said thank you," he said. Angela smiled softly. "You just did." He turned to her. "I've made arrangements. This is your home now. Permanently. I want you protected. Provided for. Always." Angela's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "They heal me too, you know. I thought my heart had nothing left after Lisa. But God wasn't done." Charlotte called from the other room. "Angela, come see what I made." Angela wiped her eyes quickly and smiled. "Coming, baby." She walked into the room with light steps, and Warren followed. The girls held up a drawing. A tall tree with 2 children beneath it, arms outstretched. Red gowns turned gold in the crayon light. Angela knelt between them, and both girls threw their arms around her. Warren watched, overwhelmed with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope and grace. He closed his eyes. Heaven didn't open with thunder. It whispered through the hands of a servant. And sometimes, the person who saves your children ends up saving you too.